So this is from Richard from Santa Monica in the USA. Hi Jody.
That is my favourite place in the world, incidentally. Absolutely love it. And you've not been there yet, have you?
No.
Heaven on earth. Heaven on earth.
There you go, Richard.
I'll be back.
Jody's happy. Anywho. Hi Jody, I have a few questions. Do you set up any kind of distribution in advance? How did you fund it? What format is it shot on and why? And finally, what kind of deals did you do with principal cast and crew?
Okay. So I'll need you to kind of break it down again bit by bit as I recall on it.
So I assume this is focused more directly on your recent feature film.
Okay, right.
Yeah. So the first question was, did you set up any kind of distribution in advance?
Okay, so we kind of just touched upon that, which is good. The question for Be Adored was yes. It wasn't signed off from the start, but we knew there was interest. And obviously from my point of view, actually this is interesting to talk about. There was a bit of a political decision to be made right from the offset. So my brother is gay. He made a film for the gay and lesbian market, which did incredibly well. Peccadillo Pictures took it on, and it went to #1 in like the UK charts. It exceeded really all expectations for what they were expecting it to do, which was great news. Now me, obviously, as a straight man, and it was never a derogatory thing to a gay and lesbian market, but for me, obviously, it didn't really make sense to make something for that audience because my progress was going to be different. So for me to work with, because my brother directed Be Adored, I wrote it. So for me to work with him, I suggested, can we make a crossover film? So a film that would appeal to both audiences. And again, that was a funny thing because Peccadillo, obviously, I think the minute that decision was made, they were kind of, the deal was more up in the air because it wasn't more something they could guarantee to sell, because obviously it's kind of, is it more of a niche or less of a niche? I guess like, they just weren't sure where to place it, so they wanted to see the finished thing before they made a decision. But also for us, like, it was going to be interesting, knowing they were interested, to be able to show it to other people. Because you, as a filmmaker, I guess you just want what's best for the film. So yeah, we made that decision. We made a crossover film, and it was interesting seeing, like, in the distribution phase, the kind of problems that created. Because also, like, a lot of straight distributors were a bit like, they weren't sure about it because it had the gay element. And I think it's quite sad that it is like that in a way, because it's almost like, why can't it be seen as a film? Like, why can't you just see it for what it is? And there's even a lot of ambiguity about, like, it's basically The Adored, it's a bit of like a twisted love triangle story. And there's like an intense, really heated, quick, brief relationship between two women. Mm-hmm. But we don't out and out at any point say that any of them are lesbian. In fact, one of them is the most sort of promiscuous character, sleeps with men and women, so, you know, she's clearly bisexual. But, like, it's not really, I wouldn't describe it as a gay film. So it's very interesting to see people's opinion of it. But yeah, so we had like a distributor interested, but obviously we wanted to explore what would happen. But we felt pretty safe and confident that we could go with Peccadillo if we needed to. So it took a lot of pressure off, I think, because it's the only time I worked on something that it was going to a clear destination and was going to get shown, which was really important to me because it had been a decade of like getting so close and not quite
getting over the edge. Yeah. So the other part of the question was, how did you fund it?
Okay, so again, it was self-funded. When I say self-funded, it was my brother and a close contingent of people that had already invested in their first film agreed to kind of reinvest. Because for Carl, it was a great position because it was a second film for him. He had something there that he could show, and it was good. Like, it looked great, and obviously it sold well, so it did make it easier. And I guess going back to the attaching people to a project, I guess that's kind of an answer to that as well, because it was his second film. It's kind of, everything was a bit easier. But for me, it was like you know, filmmakers came to me and said, "Can you write this by this date?" I think my skill is I can work under pressure fast, which Ray needed. So it kind of made sense just for us to do that together. But yeah, what was the question? Hit me again.
It's how is it funded?
How was it funded? So they funded it. And again, it was a complete load off my mind, knowing that this thing was going to get made, and that I didn't have to go and raise the money, because I think it's one of the greatest skills, the people that can go out and get money, because it's so hard. Like, you can get interest, you can get people saying they'll put money in, but I think, as we both found, like, physically getting that money in your bank so that you can go and make the stuff is it's a skill. It's hard to do. So yeah, it was self-funded, but at the same time, like, I think a lot of people, they have an illusion that if they have their money, like if you have a private investor, for example, which is it's a viable option if you're lucky enough to know somebody who will just put money in. I think there's an illusion that, like, you'll create a piece of genius work, but it doesn't always work that way. And I think you have to respect that, like, production companies, distributors, sales reps, they're damn good at what they do. They know what they're doing. They know what will sell. So actually, without their help, without being able to entice them in, there's probably a reason they don't want to work on your film, and that's because it's not ready. There's something about it that has to be changed, because it won't sell. So I think even if you had all the money in the world, if you made your film your way, yes, you'll have more control. That's not always a good thing, because you need that creative input in other elements that you don't specialise in. It's like, I can tell what's a good story, but I can't tell if it will sell in Austria, if it will sell in Germany. It's a completely different area of expertise, and you really need that. You need the collective thing for a film to do well.
That leads us on to the next question, which is, what format is it shot on and why? Which kind of leads back to the last question as well, really, doesn't it?
Kind of. It's a digital HD, right? So, as you can probably guess, I'm not a technical filmmaker. This guy is. And again, like, it's the thing, like, I embrace that. Like, I massively see myself as a writer. I love directing, but even like right now, I've just focused on writing to get established, because then it becomes easier. So I want to write and direct in the future. Even directing, I really love working with with DOP, the focus puller, the camera team, on achieving the image that I see. And also, I think you need to encourage their input, because they're the masters of their trade. So if you say, I use a lot of reference points. I'm like, oh, do you know this film? On that bit, because I won't say it in the right terminology, but I can say what I like and what I want to achieve, and I really love that collaboration. Now, you're the kind of director, you can achieve it yourself anyway.
But a lot of it's about collaboration, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
No one on set has all the skills relevant, which again kind of leads back to what you were saying before, that you know what a good story is, but you don't necessarily know which sells in Austria or whatnot. So, yeah, I mean, you've got to kind of take advantage of that, haven't you? And I guess the reason it was shot on that was partly because of finance. It was self-funded, so you didn't have a huge amount of money to shoot on film, which everyone would love to do, but it's quite a costly process nowadays. And also, it was a very rich picture as well. I mean, if you ever get to see the film, which you should buy very soon, it's a very intimate piece. So with the digital equipment you used, you had a tremendous amount of shadow depth of field throughout the piece, didn't you? Which was easily achievable in these kind of low light conditions with the digital format, which kind of worked hand in hand, which was good.
And this was, I mean, that was a creative decision. That was like, so the situation was, Carl, who was the producer-director, my brother, and Amarjeet Singh Sadal, he's he ended up doing a lot. He was the DOP, producer, cameraman, editor. He had that covered. And the fact is, because we came as like a threesome who were going to make this film, it was like the three of us were going to do this thing. He came offering his own equipment, his own time, that we didn't have to pay for, because he was in that as like a joint venture. Obviously that was a massive thing for us because it saved us untold amount of money, which was huge because we didn't have a lot of money. We had, you know, very limited. I don't know if I'm allowed to tell you how much distribution thing, so I'm going to leave that aside.
Sorry.
No, it was a creative thing, like, because we knew we were shooting in this beautiful location. We knew we had very minimal actors. The story was quite long and drawn out, so that the look of the film was so important. And there were a lot of colours, there was a lot of contrast, like some depth of field was important, and Armajit knew exactly how to bring the richness out in the picture. And yeah, it was a creative decision. It saved us a lot of money doing it that way, and it helped the film. It looked beautiful.
And what kind of deals did you do with the principal cast and crew?
Okay, so it was, I mean, a lot of people that have made a couple of films will be very familiar with the point system. Simply, it's very, very difficult to get money and finance in place. So, you know, actors want to work, writers and directors want to work. So, the compromise a lot of people will make is you won't get paid anything, but you kind of take a share of points. So if the film sells, makes money, they're guaranteed a certain kind of, they'll make something back, you know. Depending on how much they've put in, they get rewarded that much. That's the kind of concept of it. And I will say, like, it's massively important if you're going to do it that way. Just be really upfront from the beginning, know where the points are going, because it's like, it's, you know, only fair on everyone to kind of see how things are breaking down. And also be clever with it as well. If you have points, don't use all of, say, a point as a percent, so you have 100 points for argument's sake. Don't just use them all. Like, save some. So when you approach distributors, whatever it is you need, you can offer them points. Like, it's a big thing, because if that film does well, then it's another incentive for someone to look at it. And obviously, if you have a distributor who are going to make more money, the more the film sells. Self-explanatory, like, it will go in your favour.